Okay, so for our next example, we're still solving an absolute value equation. This time we have 3 times the absolute value of x minus 2 minus 9 equal to 0. Again, we still need to go through the same 4 steps we just did in the previous problem. The first step being to get this in standard form. There are actually 2 things we need to move away to get this in standard form. We've got 2 things outside of our parentheses. The first thing we have is this -9 right here that we need to get rid of. But we also need to get rid of this 3, and we cannot distribute the 3 into the absolute value of x minus 2 like we did in previous problems. We actually need to divide him out. So the first thing we're going to do is we're actually going to go ahead and do just like we did in the previous problem and any other problem where we're solving. We always want to move our addition or subtraction first. So we're going to add 9 to both sides, getting rid of this guy right here. So that would give us 3 times the absolute value of x minus 2 equals 9. Now we're going to get rid of this 3 right here, so we're going to divide 3 on both sides. And these 3's are going to cancel each other out. Remember, it's times the absolute value of x minus 2, so the opposite of multiplication is always division. So that is going to give us the absolute value of x minus 2 equals 3. And again, this particular statement, the way it's written, right here is your standard form. We've isolated the absolute value. It's got absolute value all by itself on the left-hand side. You've got your constant over on the right-hand side. That's our standard form we're looking for. Again, making sure that we keep those absolute value lines as part of our standard form. But now we need to make our negative equation and we need to make our positive equation. So when we do our negative, again, remember we're not changing anything about the absolute value, only the constant on the other side or on the right-hand side of our equation. So this is x minus 2 equals -3. And then our positive one is going to be x minus 2 equals 3. So now we just need to solve each one of these equations. So here we're going to add 2 to both sides. And that is going to give us that x is equal to -1. On this guy again, we're still going to add 2 to both sides, but now we're doing 3 plus 2. So that is going to give us that x equals 5. And again, we want to write this in that solution set. That solution set means I'm going to do a curly brace. I'm going to do -1, comma 5, and another curly brace. Then we would go on and graph those 2 points, putting a dot at -1 and putting a dot at 5. Okay, so for our next example, we are solving the absolute value of 7x plus 8 equal to 0. And hopefully you noticed just right off the bat that our absolute value is already on the left-hand side all by itself. The constant in this case, which is 0, is on the right-hand side all by itself. But what I do want you to notice that is that we are equal to 0. And if you'll remember from the first part of this video that when we're equal to 0, when the absolute value is equal to 0, you only have one possible answer, because there's only one number that's 0 units from 0. So we actually only get one equation, and that is 7x plus 8 is equal to 0. We would then subtract 8 from both sides. So 7x is equal to -8. Divide by 7. So x is equal to negative 8 over 7. And if it asked you to put it in solution set, you would just simply put negative 8 over 7 in curly braces, and that would be your answer. Okay, so for our fourth example, we're going to solve the absolute value of 6x plus 3 divided by 3 plus 4 equals to 8. And a lot of times with this problem, it looks really ugly. We've got this big fraction inside of our absolute value. It looks like it's going to be very difficult to solve. But one of the really good things about this particular problem, and any type of problem that you're going to see in your homework, is you'll notice that this 3, he's inside my absolute value, and he actually divides into both the 6x and the 3. And this only works because he divides into both of these numbers. If he didn't divide into both of these numbers, we couldn't do what we're about to do. But we are going to take this 3, and we're actually going to divide him into the 6, and we are also going to divide him into 3, which will get rid of this big fraction in the problem, and we won't have to work with it anymore. So this is going to become the absolute value of 2x plus 1 plus 4 equals 8. So now we have that. It's a lot nicer to work with. You don't have that large fraction inside your absolute value. But we still need to isolate or get this in standard form, which means that we need to move this positive 4 over here to the side with the 8. Since it's plus 4, that means we're going to subtract the 4. So we're going to have 2x plus 1 in the absolute value is equal to 4. Again, this statement right here, with including the absolute values, is your standard form. But we have to then create our negative and our positive sides of our equation. And remember that that means we're only going to be changing that 4. We're not going to change the 2x plus 1. So our negative side is going to be 2x plus 1 equals a negative 4, and then our positive is 2x plus 1 equals a positive 4. Okay, and again, remember, since we've created the two equations, we get to drop those absolute values. Now we just need to solve these two equations, and we'll find our two distinct answers. So here we're going to subtract 1 from both sides, and we're going to get 2x equals negative 5. We're going to divide by 2, and our negative answer is going to be x equals negative 5 over 2. Do the same procedures on our positive. Here we're going to subtract 1. So 2x is going to equal 3. Again, we're going to divide by 2. So x is going to equal a 3 over 2. And we want to write this again in our solution set. Remember, solution set is just the curly brace. We're going to do our smaller value, which would be this negative 5/2 first, comma, our larger value at 3/2. And guys, please make sure you understand, this is one of the very few sections in your homework where your answers need to be kept in the fraction format. You cannot change these over to decimals, and again, you still need them to be in their most reduced format. So if you get an answer that needs to be reduced, you need to go ahead and do that, but you need to keep them in their fraction forms. So for our last problem that we're going to do for solving absolute value equations, this is probably going to be your favorite. We have the absolute value of x minus 3 equal to a negative 3. And again, if you recall from the very first time we started talking about absolute values, first of all, remember it was the distance the number was from 0, and one of the second statements I told you was that it makes everybody positive. So right here where we see this equal to a negative number after we're in standard form, which we are in this because our absolute value is by itself, if we're equal to a negative number here, then that means that this is no solution. We can't solve this problem because we cannot have an absolute value equal to a negative number. Ever. Doesn't work out. We cannot have it happen. So anytime you see it after the problem is in standard form, we're done. We get to say no solution, and we don't have to do anything past that point.